to Brave Girls with Tracy M, Season 4, which I'm calling Smart Money. And this is a podcast series where women are going to share their real stories behind how they earn it, grow it, and navigate it. I'm Tracy M, and each week we'll go beyond the numbers to have honest conversations with women who work in the financial services industry about their careers, their challenges, and their personal journeys with money. We'll also talk to women who've written books about money. And so, because money isn't just about spreadsheets or stock markets, it's about power, confidence, opportunity, and sometimes overcoming systems that weren't built with us in mind. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, building wealth, or just trying to feel more in control of your finances, this season is here to give you perspective, insight, and a reminder. There's not just one way to be smart with money. So let's get into it. So, welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. I am super excited for today's guest, Dr. Pam Love, who I have met through a women's organization in Baltimore, and she is now taking over as our chair of our organization. And it's a really great organization, and I'm super excited to be working with Dr. Pam on her board. And welcome to the show, Dr. Pam. Why don't you give our audience a little bit of a backstory on who you are and the work that you're doing in the world?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me, Tracy. Really, I've listened to your podcast and have enjoyed the episode. So it's a pleasure to be here and I really appreciate it. Who am I? I am Pam Love. I am the president of DP Love Enterprises and the founder of Finishers Network, which is a division of my company. And what we do is offer training, leadership, consulting, and coaching. And we provide a lot of support for individuals because people start a lot of things and they don't finish. So, but I work with a lot, mostly nonprofit organizations. I have worked with some others, but do work nationally. And so that's just a little bit about me. Now, backstory. How did I get to this? I have a history of trauma. As a child, was molested, and as you know, that changes who you are. And as a result, by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was drinking, I was getting high, ended up having to deliver a dead child, have tried to commit suicide multiple times. And from that, ended up being raped. I've been in 4 or 5 car accidents. I've been in an elevator accident, got in on the third floor, dropped to the bottom floor, um, was in a relationship with someone who had an addiction. So pretty much lost everything. Have been on welfare and the range of things that go along with all of that. And so surviving so many different types of things has really informed the work that I do, because so many people would say, how have you been able to accomplish what you've accomplished after going through so much? How is it that you don't look like what you've been through? How is it that you're not bitter and you're able to move forward? And the other part is, how are you so calm at times? And I thought, woo, if you could flip me on the inside and see some days, but life will do that to you. When you've been through a lot, some things don't bother you the same way anymore. But having gone through all that I've gone through, Tracy, it really has helped to inform the work that I do. And so, although I have degrees, I have, textbook knowledge is one thing, but I have lived experiences that really affect the work and the people that I work with.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, I see you as the polished chair of the Executive Alliance with all these degrees and these businesses. And yeah, it's like how you present that would not, I would have never known that, right? Is that part of the reason why you went in sort of the social work path? So like as you were healing yourself and exploring, human dynamics and psychology and things of that nature to help yourself, is that kind of how it led you to that field in some ways? I'm just making that assumption.
Yeah, it's interesting. My journey has been one that I feel like I've been led more so than I've been intentional at times.
Oh, okay.
So I started out wanting to be an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
I'd always wanted to be a teacher. And then as I got older, I ended up going back to school as an adult. So, I
Okay.
didn't finish
Yeah.
my bachelor's degree until my children were born. And so sometimes because of the situation I was in, I was taking them to school with me.
Hmm.
But when I was in it, I ended up in the Ronald McNair Post Baccalaureate Achievement Program. And the goal for students in that program is to get the terminal degree. Well, they were going to pay me to attend workshops. I'm in undergrad, I'm on welfare. I don't know, just based on the situation I was in. And so I'm taking the money, and not
Hmm.
really so serious about getting the terminal degree. But at some point, the director of the program invited me to do a summer research internship, which was a requirement. And most of the students went out of state. I wasn't in a position to go out of state with two children. At
Right.
this point, I'm a single mother. And so, I ended up going to the School of Social Work, University of Maryland. And
Okay.
I was assigned to by the associate dean of the school to a mentor. And from there, they began to really kind of sway me.
Yeah.
What you're really interested in is social work. So I went back to undergrad and finished my bachelor's in psychology. And
Okay.
then, I get a phone call one day. You've been enrolled in a summer program for at the School of Social Work. So decisions were being
Right.
made for me. People saw things in me that because of my pain, I wasn't seeing in myself. And
Right.
so that's how I ended up in social work. But I believe I was supposed to. Now, I've always done administration. I did not do the clinical aspects of social work. There are certain courses you have to
Yeah. Yeah.
take,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I did the MSW. And then, of course, the director of the McNair program continued to encourage us, you're supposed to get the terminal degree. And then faculty at the School of Social Work and some of the leadership continued to encourage me. And so once I finished the MSW, 2 years later, I entered the PhD program.
Okay, that makes sense. The other part of your work that I'm fascinated by, because I am not a finisher, I get eight tenths of the way there and then it stops. So what kind of like, did you just observe this in other people, or like what inspired you to do that? Because I was like, I might need to hire Dr. Pam to help me finish some things, because that's my pattern, right? Is I get so far and then I either lose interest, something else, is a bright shiny object for me, and then I sort of have regrets that I didn't take it all the way across the finish line, which I'm sure a lot of people have that.
Yes, it's true. That's the thing. I found that a lot of people started things and then later in life, I was reading too many stories of regret. People
Uh,
had regrets. And so for me, it's not just about any goal. Now, if I'm working with an organization, that's different, but
yeah.
it's not just any goal. These are goals that are meaningful and significant to you. A lot
Mhm.
of people were saying, I want to write a book. I want to, I have this
Right.
business I want to start. I have all of these, this nonprofit, whatever it is, and yet they don't start it. I had an aha moment, Tracy, at some point where I realized, K through 12, we have support, accountability that are built in, right?
True.
Go to college and there's still some accountability. You're going to get the grades. You can't take the next class, right?
Right.
But for some reason, we expect that people are going to just achieve goals without that same support and accountability. So think about this. If you've had from early childhood all the way through high school into college, even
We have that structure.
that
Right.
structure, that support,
Right.
that
Right.
accountability. You can't
Right.
go to the next grade unless you have to pass this assignment. You've got to study. Parents are encouraging you, other people are encouraging you.
Right.
They have a vested interest. And there are people who are that are holding you accountable that are being held accountable. Now all of
Right.
a sudden, you're trying to accomplish something and you
Yeah.
find yourself floundering. And so there are some people who intrinsically they're motivated, they're going to do whatever it is, but there are others that are simply not without that support. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a group of women who were interested in writing a book. They
Mhm.
all wanted to finish their book. So what I did is scheduled some time with them, and I would meet periodically and we would get together and they would just write for an hour.
Mhm.
And then I said, okay, you all are good. You can do this on your own. The moment I stopped, very shortly after, they stopped. And it
Mhm.
was when I came back to that group and said,
Right.
you know what? You were doing something different when you had accountability. And so every
Yes.
Monday night for 30 minutes, we're just doing a check-in. And when
Oh,
I did that, people said, oh, I felt like I needed to have something to report.
yeah.
And so you had some of them who ended up finishing the book.
Oh, wow. And so the Finishers Network, is that like a community where you provide that accountability? Is that what that is?
We do courses, we do community. Yep. And I've done it in a smaller way. I am looking to do it in a bigger way because
Yeah.
there are so many people that don't finish what they start.
Oh, I
And
gotta
so,
believe it's like 75%, if not higher, of the
yeah,
population.
that's right. Yeah,
Because you
think
get
about it. At the beginning of
busy.
the year, we set goals, and
Yes.
January. By February,
Like,
even some
you
of us are
stop.
like, oh, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So tell me, you've also written a number of books. Tell me about your books and like the genesis of the books, the inspiration of the books, like the purpose of the books, all that kind of stuff, because you've written multiple books.
absolutely. Yeah. So in 20, I believe it was '03, I took a challenge to write a book. I had a coach that said, I'm tired of people saying they're going to write books and they don't. And so this particular challenge, he said, you have to write and complete the book in 90 days or less.
Oh my God.
And
That's
I raised my hand. I raised my
yeah.
hand and said, ah, and I literally looked at my hand because I said, wait a minute, I'm working on a dissertation proposal. How in the world I don't have time
Yeah.
for this, right? And so, but because I had committed to do that, I pushed forward. I wrote the book called It's All About Love, Living Your Purpose in Spite of Your Past, in under 30 days. I had written 110 pages in 1 week. And then I got to a point where I said to the coach, I don't think this is it. And he said, good. You probably just emotionally dumped. Now you can write the actual book. And that's what I did, still under 30 days, but it took about 6 months before it was in print with all of the other things
Yeah.
that had to go. So that was the first book where I openly share my journey and I say to the reader, what are your buts? Why are you not living the life that you were meant to live? Second book, I had been a professor at Bowie State University and I was finding many young women. I was the faculty enhancement advisor for an organization on campus. So I was interacting with a lot of students from across the campus.
Right.
And so they were telling me the story. And of course, because of my own personal journey, when I had traveled around and was talking to different women's groups,
Hmm.
and I had 80-year-old women telling me things that they said they had never told people before. So I'm hearing lots of stories, and one thing that I found, there was a common denominator, and it was always a sexual encounter. And so the
Hmm.
second book is I Want My Vagina Back. And that was a risk. And I didn't even think about it until after the book was out. They said, "Oh my goodness, you wrote what?" I There were women, Tracy, 40s, 50s, who said they had difficulty saying the word vagina. I had one woman, I was on a podcast, and she said, I had to practice saying it. So it was fascinating. But this particular book is stories of women, various stories that talk about everything from same-sex relationships, extramarital affairs. All the women have regrets, and at the end of the each chapter are questions. Why do we say yes when we really want to say no? What's the value of your vagina to you? I mean, it's questions to simulate dialogue. So that book has been used both in and outside of the country. I have found out about so many people that used it for various groups, and I've traveled around the country with that book as well. It was also turned into a stage production. I was contacted by the founder of the Atlanta Black Theater Festival. And so in 2014, she executive produced it as her signature production at that festival. There are like 40 plays or something like
Right.
that, but this was her signature production, and she had a celebrity cast.
Hmm.
We TV filmed, and so a segment has been on Braxton Family Values. Just a little snippet of Tawanda Braxton with that. And so I then took it several years later and became the executive producer, and I produced it at the Baltimore Museum of Art for 2 years. People were asking me if I would take it on the road, and the cast wanted to travel all around, but I was self-funding. And so that was all very new to me. I didn't know that world. And so I kind of shut it down for a minute. From there, I wrote a few other books. You've heard about the book Life Happens, But You Can Finish, which Dr. Tony Draper and I co-authored. We have 12 ladies who were contributors to that particular book. And it's really when life happens, how do you finish? What does it take to finish? And the last book that I wrote was See You at the Finish Line, Cultivating the Mindset of a Finisher. And so those are the 5 books that I've authored or co-authored.
Wow. What do you have in store next for your sixth book? Are you taking a break?
No, there's one this year. I'm actually working on something right now, hot off the press. We're working on, I have 10 contributing authors. I did a course called Developing the Endurance to Finish. And so individuals that were part of that course were given an opportunity to be part of an anthology. And so it's interesting. That one, that was 22, 23. It has taken me a minute to finish. However, one thing that I always say to people when they're trying to accomplish something, there are our deadlines, and I believe there are God's deadlines. And
Oh,
so,
100%.
right? And so, as much as we say, I'm going to finish this by this date, there are times that we can push and do that, but is it the finished product that you want?
Hmm.
Is it the finished product that it's supposed to be? And
Hmm.
so, inevitably, something happens that changes the story that people are going to tell. And now I understand that better because each woman, I met with them recently, and each woman who tells her story, I should say, for the most part, things have shifted. Something significant happened, and they've had to go back and rewrite or add to the story. And so that a book on endurance is coming out. The Endurance to Finish is coming out probably sometime late summer.
I love that. Yeah, and sometimes I feel like I don't want to say God throws obstacles in our way because sometimes I feel like it's just a redirection, but
Yeah,
like something drops out of the sky that like completely you think like I might be devastated that this thing just happened, but the reason it happened is because there's something down here that the timing's just not right for, and so I have to sit with what just happened, right? And what am I supposed to learn from that? Because, and then I just have to trust that this other thing is over here that's going to be 1,000% better, right?
that's right.
I
Yeah,
can't tell you the number of times that that has happened to me where I'm just devastated that like I didn't get the job or I didn't get the interview or I didn't get the whatever. And then I look back and I was like, oh, I wasn't supposed to be over there. I was supposed to be over here, but they
mhm,
weren't ready for me over here. Some things had to be rearranged over here.
that's
And
right.
then I do have to go back and rewrite or, reorder sort of the chapters or the main theme or whatever it is. Because I'm in the process right now of writing my book proposal and I've been working on it for like 3 years now. And in the meantime, I've got another book idea. And I was talking to a publisher the other day and she said, I was like, I'm kind of like, what do I focus on? And she goes, you need to write both and you need to spend an hour a week on both and just heads down, words on paper, whatever it is. I do best when I don't know if you do this, but I do best when it's hand to heart and I write and then I type it. Or
Mm,
my new thing is I speak it into a voice memo and have AI transcribe it, right?
okay.
Because the thought will come and I might be in the car, right? So I'll record
Mhm.
a voice memo. So I don't know what's your technique when
Yeah.
are you hand to heart or you type? The hands-on keyboard doesn't really work for me. I don't do my
Okay.
best writing there.
Okay. Yeah. Once I have an idea, I have to be there. So
Okay.
for instance, when I wrote I Want My Vagina Back, the stories, I'm there. So the imagination, I have a wild imagination. So I go on the journey of what I'm writing. So I can sit down. I have never been able to write outlines first and then do what I'm going to do. The other part I do, Tracy, is schedule my time. This was something a coach taught me some time ago. It's similar to the Pomodoro technique,
Yes.
25 minutes. I don't always set 25. I might do 30. I might do 40, but I force myself to stop. And I found that to be very effective. I know when I was working on my dissertation, I dreaded coming home after working all day and having to write something that was so, detailed. And
Mhm.
so what I would do is schedule blocks of time, 25, 30, 40 minutes maximum. And
Right.
then I would sit down and work. First couple days, I'm thinking about what I want to eat and, everything.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
after that, I get in a flow. And so
Hmm.
that has really worked. But I do tell people it's important to find what works for you because every technique is not going to be the technique for
Yes.
you.
Yes.
You have to know what works and what's your environment? What inspires you to be able to be in that space to write?
Yeah. Yeah. So this season of my podcast, I've been talking about women and money, and
Mhm.
you've self-funded this, production. You've, run your own business for a number of years. How would you, describe your relationship with money or your mindset around money? and if it's shifted over time, you
It
know?
has. It really has. One thing, even with the business, I had to embrace the fact that I was not my business, right?
Yeah,
I
like that
accept
wasn't your identity,
that
right?
was not my identity. That's right. And I also had to shift, I had been in leadership positions in organizations, and I, am used to functioning a certain way. But when you're operating in a business for yourself and you don't have a storefront or a building, right, that you're operating, you're working from home, it's easy to take those phone calls. It's easy to get distracted. So I also had to shift around that to say, you know what? I've got to treat this as if this is an organization. This is
Mhm.
not mine. This is an entity that someone else could actually take over.
Correct.
And what do I need to do? Now, around money, to your question, it has shifted around money. I think, I've not always been the best steward of money. And I
Mhm.
had to realize that my mindset and how I thought about abundance has shifted.
Mhm.
That, I worthy of the things that I was pursuing? There was a lot, and a lot of that as a result of the trauma that I experienced.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so I had to set some goals, and I got some coaching around
Mhm.
money and set it, hitting some targets. What's going to be my target? How do you 10x that? What do you do? What's the requirement for you to achieve what it is you want to? And I really found, I participated in so many programs. I've spent tons of money on various programs, and the one was a 12-week year.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
yeah, and that one really made me think about how quickly you can accomplish something, whether it's your financial goals or whether it's personal goals. And so I've used that a number of times, but I've also found that for some goals, that's not going to be the best. But I think around money, I think, I grew up with probably scarcity mindset.
Well, sure, that was the environment you were raised, you came
That's
up.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so you're constantly holding on to, and one, I think, major area where my mindset around money has shifted is that it really is uh, better to give. Giving produces so much. And
And
I didn't
gratitude.
understand that.
I feel
Yeah.
like gratitude
Gratitude.
is,
Yes.
I feel like gratitude for whatever, like
Yeah.
having daily gratitude practice is really helpful. I also think
Yeah.
that the worthiness is a part, like I feel like for me, it was the worthiness, it was that the universe is abundant and the money's always there mindset.
That's right.
And that, not beating myself up saying I'm not good with money, but saying I'm really good with money, I'm really good with math. This is just
Yeah.
a math problem.
Yeah.
I think, being a good steward, like you said. And
Yeah.
then, I just did a bunch of donations to organizations that I really feel passionately about. And
Hmm.
I'm fortunate that I work for a company that has a match, so I was able to do the match. So it's like, I just felt like this is really great because it's helping the intended recipient is like young girls, right? Or yeah,
Hmm.
young girls or girls entering college or whatever, so that they can, be able to go to college. And there's one particular one I fund a endowed scholarship, and I met the recipient
Oh, yeah,
earlier
that's
this
wonderful.
year. And
Hmm.
she, when we established this endowed scholarship, we wanted it to be a woman that was first generation college that would not on her own even be able to get financial aid to go to college, and be able and be saddled with all this debt. It was somebody that was going to really, it was going to change their life. And so I met this girl, and she had so much gratitude. And I was like, I'm so glad you're the one that got it, because that's who we wanted it to go to. We wanted
Yeah.
it somebody from Baltimore City. We wanted it to be somebody that was first generation. And she is thriving in college. And, she was just so grateful because she got a full 4-year ride.
Mm,
And she will have zero debt. This paid for her books, it paid for her housing, it paid for everything.
that's
And
wonderful.
she is just flourishing as a leader. Coming into herself, defining what she wants in the world. And I was just like, I couldn't have been happier that I was part of the reason that she was there. I mean, it wasn't just me, it was other women who had
Hmm.
contributed to the fund, but we had gotten matching gifts, and like we had really like tried every angle that we could to pour into this one person being able to have a full ride for 4 years and not have to worry, right? Because the worst thing that could happen to somebody is they get a 1-year scholarship, and then they're
They,
like, now what do I do? Right? Or they
that's
don't
right.
have any food, or, just
That's right.
they don't have any money to live on, right? So that they don't always have to eat at the dining hall, like things like that. So I agree with you. I think it's the stewardship and the gratitude and the giving
Yeah.
really shifts your mindset.
It really does. And one other thing, for me, for a long time, it seemed as though every time I accomplished something, someone tried to hurt me. And so there was that fear. I mean, I'm talking from elementary school. I was outstanding student of the region in, graduating from elementary school. Back then it was sixth grade, right?
Right.
And so there was, a situation that happened every single time. So there was this fear that for me of achieving. And so I would hit a wall and I had to realize what was that about? And so that took some work to understand why I was allowing myself to hit the wall. I wasn't a victim. It wasn't that someone was stopping me. I was
Right.
stopping myself. So I think,
Right.
when you want to shift your mindset, you really have to look at the root cause of some of the behavior. Once I shifted that, then I was able to see the flow of money, and that made
Mhm.
a big difference.
That's great. That's great. I want you to bring back your production. I think, I think about the Epstein stuff, like
Yeah.
how that could really help a lot of people heal, because I know that has triggered a lot for a lot of people who maybe had suppressed their sexual assaults, or their history. And I just read something yesterday. At one point, I think it was Oprah did a podcast. So at one point, it was 1 in 4 women had been victims of sexual assault, and now it's 1 in 2.
The domestic violence. Yeah, I saw that.
That's
I
right,
did.
because you're on
Yeah.
the domestic violence
Family
council
counsel.
with
Yes,
with the
absolutely.
lieutenant governor. Yeah, yeah, and
Right.
I was
Which
involved with
is
that back in the day. Yeah.
really sad to think that, when you're sitting next to someone, one of you has experienced something. The likelihood or the
Yeah.
probability is there. To your point, I have planned to, once I get on the other side of this endurance book, to
Mhm.
relaunch, to do an anniversary edition of the I Want My Vagina Back book. And so what I'm
That's a
going
good
to do,
idea.
yeah, I'm going to do that and look at some other things. I would love to see it as a film. I've been, had some conversations with people to do that because I think that it really is a conversation starter. And, I've
Yeah.
had men who have given that books to their daughter, but also looked for themselves in the stories of each of the chapters. And
Mhm.
so I think it is worthy of a conversation for people that they weren't quite ready for when I first released that book, which was in 2011.
Yeah, you were before your time a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I think the moment is now, and I'm gonna help you with that because
Huh?
I'm with you. I think that because also, you know, if you make it into like a film, a documentary, whatever you want to call it, then it can go to more audiences, right? Like
Right.
the reach is deeper and wider. So yeah, that's our next project, Dr. Pam.
Okay, I'd love for you to help me.
I'm
Yes,
in. Yeah,
I
yeah,
need,
I'm
yes,
in.
for
I'm
sure.
in. I'm in. So, the work that you do with organizations now, mostly in the nonprofit space, but businesses too, what do you find is the number one like problem that they bring you in to help them with? Is it teamwork? Is it like what is it that, or is it that people don't want to have conflict, they're conflict resistant, or like what are you seeing out in the world in your work with teams?
It's often leadership challenges, management, supervision. Many people have not been trained how to lead, Tracy, and you know that.
I
You
do
know
know
that.
that. I do
They,
know that.
they
Yeah.
don't. And so it creates conflict. A lot of times it is communication. A lot of the work that I do with individuals is related to emotion regulation. And
Yes.
so people and self-awareness. So it's the emotional intelligence piece. A lot of people think they're self-aware, and I just sit back and listen and I, let them talk. And
Mhm.
you talk long enough and I can tell how self-aware you really are. And
Mhm.
so there are a number of techniques that I use. I am certified in the Thinking for a Change model, which is for justice involved individuals, but it's a cognitive behavioral approach which can be adapted and used in various settings. So I
Mhm.
use a lot of the techniques and role plays with
Right.
individuals to help them. So a big part of it is about self-awareness. How do you minimize conflict? How do you deal with difficult conversations? How do you learn to engage people that you're working with to help them to accomplish what it is they're supposed to accomplish? And a
Mhm.
lot of it is how you're talking to them. So it's communication for the
Right.
most part.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think what I see a lot in organizations is subject matter experts who are technically expert
Okay.
that get promoted into leadership or management roles, and they don't have like they don't have any business leading a team, right?
Okay.
And they don't have the self-awareness or the desire to onboard those skill sets, right? Or
True.
the aptitude or whatever. And so sometimes I think the best managers and leaders are not technical experts and they're not subject matter experts. They might lead a team of subject matter experts, but it's motivating and inspiring and communicating to the team what we're trying to accomplish and getting everybody rowing in the same direction. So I agree with you. I think um, it's almost like universal. It doesn't even really matter what industry you're in or if it's a nonprofit.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I tell people, my first job was Geno's. I don't know if you remember Geno's in Baltimore.
Martinez, yes.
Cold Spring and Dolefield. That was my first job. And I tell folks it doesn't matter whether you worked in fast food or whether you work in corporate, the skills are transferable when it comes to leadership.
I would agree
It's
with that.
transfer. You just have to understand the technical aspects of the job that you're performing, but it's transferable.
Yeah, and I always recommend to my college students that I teach, before you get out of college, you have to have one retail job, whether it's fast food or it's a restaurant or it's a bank. Like you have to learn how to deal with the public, and that will take you very far in every industry. If you know how to
Absolutely.
treat people at work, that are your customers, like you have to have a customer facing job
It's true.
like that will be your greatest asset as you move forward in your career because you're always going to have to know who are my customers, what are we selling them or providing what service are we providing for them, and so you have to have an understanding of that, and then when they get upset you have to know how to deal with that. And
Yes.
so I always highly encourage college students to have a retail job, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter.
That's
Um,
great. I
but I know just for me, I worked at Friendly's and, started just making the ice cream and serving it out the window at the carry out to then, I became a hostess, then I became a waitress, and then they wanted me to be assistant manager. So it's like climbing, through that. But it's you learn so much about yourself and how to approach the public, and I just think that's so important.
It really is. Yeah. I think, customer service has gone out the window for so many organizations. And so I think the right setting for retail is very important too, because some are
Yes.
teaching those skills. They're doing a lot better. When I was with Geno's, we had 30 seconds from the time the customer gave us your order to get get the order. Once we took the money, we had
Yeah.
30 seconds. So you were running around there trying to get, it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta, and you were supposed to do it with a smile, right?
Right.
And the customer was right. And you
Yes.
understood that how you behaved affect the name, the brand of the
Brand.
organization. And I find that a lot of people don't understand that. They think this is just about me and what I do is just about me.
Right.
No, this is going to affect the organization or the company that you're working with as well,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's not good service.
So we've talked a lot about your background, where you are, what you've created, where you're going, like all the things. What would you say is the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inform the work that you do today?
Mm. Two things. I would say writing, I want my vagina back. That
Mhm.
was one of the brave things that I didn't realize it at first. But Tracy, I think the second thing for me was choosing to live and how I have used my pain to become a platform to help other people.
I love that. I love that. I think also your story is, I mean, it's relatable. There's some piece of your story that people have seen themselves in that movie, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, and you do come across very calm and sort of on the other side of it. So I think that probably that inspires and gives hope to somebody who may be in your earlier chapter, or maybe they have gone through that, but then they haven't been able to get over the hump to get to like where you are now with your mindset and your accomplishments and your work in the world, and they want that for themselves,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, a lot of times they see that, and and I've worked in so many different companies, organizations. I worked for the federal government early in my career. I've worked for the electric company. I worked in corporate. I worked, mostly in higher ed and public. But my story, as you said, is often relatable. So people will read, I say, yes, yes, read the bio, because I want them to hear that. But then I come back with my story, and then people go, oh, wait a minute. We didn't know that about you. That's right. You thought I was coming in with just textbook knowledge. No, I'm coming in with experience that is relatable, and usually people will relax. So, typically I'm really good at getting people to open up. I don't have to say, so tell me your story or anything.
Yes.
People, because there's a connection. And so I think the bravest thing that I've done is really to use my pain and turn it into a platform for to help other people. And that's why I say, I often like to share the story because it really helps people to better understand why I do what I do. I really am about uplifting women. I know the challenges of so many women. I don't know the challenge of all women, but I do know the challenges of too many women. And I know I can see behind the pain.
Mhm.
I remember a friend, I said to a friend some years ago, sent it actually to several people and said, if you were talking to someone and they weren't going to say anything, what would you say about me? And I had a friend who said, I see you smile, but in your eyes there's sadness. And I was going through major depression at that time. And
Mhm.
so, I can often see behind the facade
Mhm.
and to work with people to get beyond what they're presenting. And so, but it's as a result of many of my experiences.
Yeah, you've got the lived experience. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you have a TEDx talk on your roadmap? Because there's a TEDx talk in there.
You're gonna have me doing all kinds of, and I'm
I
all for it. I am so
am.
for it. Tracy, there is a creative side to me that many people don't tap into. I love playing games. I love writing.
Mhm.
Probably if I could just write books, I would do
Mhm.
that all day and
Oh,
have it
yeah.
turned into some production or some role play or something.
Right,
I
right,
just love it.
right.
But anyway, it's yeah, what I do, who I am really informs what I do, and I'm intentional about some things. Very intentional.
Well, I'm really looking forward to serving on your board and seeing what we can co-create for the women of Maryland and the, girls of Maryland through our work in
Yes.
Executive Alliance. And I'm just so grateful that you asked me to be on your board. And I feel like I have so much to learn from you. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. We are going to put all your contact information, your book links, your website, your social. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you or wants to find out more, that will all be in the show notes.
Okay.
And I just really appreciate you, and I see you as a brave girl. And I just can't wait for this episode to drop so that women in other countries can hear your story. They can be inspired by your story. They can, get in touch with you. They can know who you are. And I think sharing your money mindset and behavior and the shifts that you've made over time, I think is going to be really helpful for our listeners. So just intense gratitude for you making the time today to be on the show. So thank you, Dr. Pam Love.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. No, it's been an honor. I really appreciate you inviting me to be on your show. Really do. You are a phenomenal woman, and I'm honored that you said yes to being part of the board and for what you do. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap, and we will talk to everybody later. Thanks for listening to this episode of Smart Money. If you've enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone that you think needs it. These stories matter because the more we talk openly about money, the more we normalize women owning their financial journeys and shaping the future of finance and the world. You can find show notes and more episodes and connect with us on social. Until next time, remember, being smart with money isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. So these were real stories, real money, real power, because financial confidence starts with these conversations.